Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Three-Quarter-Time Podcast, where we celebrate the stories of sport. I'm Wilks, and rebuilding in sport is a buzzword that can send shivers down the spines of all supporters. And it becomes a word that can often be used as an easy excuse for any under-pressure coach. Where rebuilding, we can't be expected to win every week. We made them earn it. Sometimes the word rebuilding provides a cold comfort to long-suffering supporters, but rebuilding, as it happens, is not often as bad as it's made up to be. No team can be successful forever. Success, it comes and goes, it fades and dies. Think about the Chicago Bulls. They returned back to the doldrums after the height of their success with players like Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and having the enigmatic Phil Jackson as head coach. Manchester United have recently struggled to fill the hole left by the magnanimous Alex Ferguson. And after having one manager in Ferguson for 20 years, they then had 10 managers in the next 12 years. Richmond in the AFL, following the breaking of their 44-year premiership drought in 2017. After winning 3 premierships in 4 years under Damien Hardwick, they've returned back to relying on the draft and playing youth and rebuilding in an effort to get back there. And whilst, yes, every fan of every team wants to be successful for a long, long period of time, rebuilding offers a chance for teams and fans and supporters to have different eras. And whether these eras are good or bad, they are always memorable and they always help develop the character of both the teams, the players, and the supporters. Just think about it. For Arsenal, the sweetness of winning the Premier League is made even sweeter after they survived the COVID years and Mikel Arteta's interesting coaching tactics and 2020 COVID Arsenal was memed to within oblivion. For West Ham, the delirium of winning the Conference League was only made more insane after surviving the constant relegation fights, championship campaigns, and mid-table finishes. And I come to West Ham and this notion of rebuild because West Ham have obviously been relegated. I've being of the probably pessimistic view that West Ham are always probably going to go down this season. We started incredibly poorly, conceded 13 goals in the first 5 games, and that 13 goals ended up being the goal difference, which meant that only one result on the last day could have kept us up. That being a West Ham win against Leeds and a Tottenham loss against Everton, because the 13 goal difference swing was impossible to get unless we belted Leeds by 13 goals and Everton drew. That just wasn't happening. So we started poorly. West Ham's form picked up in when the pressure was put off, but ultimately when the pressure came back on, we couldn't take our chances. Anyway, West Ham have obviously been relegated, and relegation in football can be taken one of two ways. Obviously, it's a big economic burden, economic change to a club. It's also a big cultural and player change to a club. Players leave because of relegation. Clubs can't oftentimes afford to pay their best players. Some players believe that, and some players probably are too good for the championship. They deserve to play Premier League football. They deserve to play European football. All of these different circumstances lead to big changes, lead to big shifts. But you can take it. You can either take it negatively and sulk and whine, or you can use it as motivation, as drive, and you can use it to spur on a rebuild, a shift, a reset. And ultimately, I believe this is what West Ham need. And I think most fans and staff and players will probably agree with this. West Ham have gone down, that's a big shift, but also the hierarchical changes of West Ham have probably come about for the better. The co-chairman, majority shareholder, David Sullivan, has resigned. Karen Brady, who was a part of the hierarchy of West Ham, resigned earlier in the year. And ultimately, those two have been the architects of West Ham's downfall. They have had a clear lack of ambition, lack of drive. They butchered the club, removing West Ham from Upton Park, its cultural hub, its soul. And by doing that, they created a mass disconnect between the club and the fans. And West Ham as a club is a very, very proud football club. And they have ultimately been incredibly complicit in sending, in years of club mismanagement, and West Ham have been relegated as a consequence of it. Their unambition, their meddling in transfers, their poor scouting, their poor vision. They haven't been very proactive, a very reactive football club. So it's time for West Ham to use this relegation to create a rebuild, to clear house, to restore a culture and a pride within the club, within the football club. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens to West Ham as a result of this, especially given, there are a few players like Matheus Fernandes who have been given quite high price tags, 85 million, I think we're reporting to want to sell him for. I mean, he's a good player, but it'll be interesting to see what happens, and it'll be interesting to see who stays. Obviously, someone like Jarrod Bowen is our captain. He's married into the West Ham family. Thomas Soucek, he appears to bleed claret and blue. Who will stay, who will go? But West Ham now have the opportunity to be freed from the shackles of unambition, and hopefully we can use this championship season to bring back a pride in the club. But speaking of rebuilding is obviously a notion that's very prevalent throughout history in terms of cultural shifting and changing amongst nations, especially after wartime. War can often have a mass impact on the structure and the political organisation of countries during war, and then as a result, when war ends, certain things happen. Certain nations go to other countries. Some countries get freed from regimes. Germany, after the end of World War II, experienced a hard reset after their, tyrannical Nazi regime ravaged Europe during World War II. As punishment, they were split into 4 distinct zones of occupation between. The Russians had East Germany, and the Americans, French, and British all had districts in the West. And and Germany itself experienced a much needed change from the fascistic regime that brutalized Europe during the war. The Western Zone was rebuilt ideologically through democratization, and as a result of this reset rebuild, the World Cup provided West Germany with an opportunity to restore Germany on the world stage and use football as a place to show, as a platform to re-establish themselves on the world stage and make them earn a re-establishment of themselves on the world stage. And then they won the World Cup in 1954, and in 1974 they lost the final in England in 1966. So they became put back into the cultural zeitgeist as a result of the World Cup, and it's interesting to see, obviously, with the World Cup fast approaching. The World Cup becomes a canvas to assess rebuilds, to uh, put teams against, and give them a goal to look for, to restore and rebuild a pride to the country. And obviously, with West Germany, that's one example. But more currently, you think of the World Cup providing a platform of rebuild for the England football team. England obviously brought football to the world, and there's that famous song, it's coming home, football's coming home, where England always get given these mass expectations of doing well and winning these European tournaments, these World Cup tournaments, but the expectation often has a negative impact and genuinely influences England's performances. They often become constrained and confined to the expectation, rarely overcome it. And following multiple European and World Cup disasters, 2006, they had the so-called golden generation of Beckham and Rooney and Cole and Lampard and Gerrard and all these players. They couldn't succeed with it. There was a lack of unity. There was a lack of pride. There was a lack of culture that stemmed from club allegiances, club loyalties, and they were unable to compete with probably the more unified teams. And I mean, in that 2006 World Cup, you had multiple teams of absolute superstars. Many teams had golden generations, but England weren't able to do anything with theirs. You have England losing multiple penalty shootouts and big games. You think of the 98 Argentina game, 96 Euros, and they needed a change. They needed a shift, and they needed to rebuild. And following the 2016 loss to Iceland, Gareth Southgate came in to rebuild England culturally and re-establish a pride in representing the nation, and trying to give England a way to rebuild past the pressure of expectation. And ultimately, even though he didn't have success with it, there was England go into this World Cup as probably one of the favourites to win it, because without Southgate's cultural reconstruction of the England team, cultural rebuilding of the England team, they wouldn't have made quarterfinals, semi-finals, knockout games. They wouldn't have won these penalty shootouts. They won they wouldn't have made these European finals in 2020 and 2024. So they've been there, and they've crossed the next step. They're at a point now where the realistic next step, as a result of the framework and foundations laid by Southgate, is to win the trophy, is to reward the supporters who have suffered through many rebuilds and many false hopes and unmet expectations. They have the ability to reward them. England haven't won a World Cup or European tournament since 1966, when West Ham won the World Cup. Bobby Moore captained them. Jeff Hurst scored a hat-trick. Martin Peters scored the second goal, I think it was. So England, through this rebuild, have come out stronger. And as I was talking about at the top of the show, success tastes only sweeter when you experience the doldrums. Now, going back to West Ham, with this rebuild that they should reasonably take, being freed from the shackles of ambition and reactivity. They obviously won we won the Europa Conference League in 2023, and where any club would realistically kick on, West Ham only really got worse and they stagnated. We went from a Conference League final to away days at Lincoln and Wrexham in the span of 3 years, going to the Championship, going to a league that is one of the toughest and most physical in all of sport. But there are many examples in English football of rebuilds working out. Now, Sunderland, following 8 years of consignment to Championship and League One, they were relegated in 2016, and they were put into the absolute pits of lower league football. They have finally emerged from the bleak mines of lower league football into the Stadium of Light, and they've rocketed back into the Premier League, and they made a 7th-place finish, and they find their way back to Europe after 52 years. Now, Sunderland are a big club, and for their supporters, it's been a slippery slope and a rocky road, but they've recruited well, and they've got ambitious ownership. I think the guy's Swiss. I don't know his name, but he's a young owner, and he's ambitious. And they've got Regis Labrie, who's a very forward-thinking manager, and as a result of them fighting their way through the slums of lower league football, they've been rewarded, and their fans have been rewarded for their patience, for their determination, for their tenacity, and for their passion, and they've been rewarded with a return to Europe. Bournemouth's another example of very, very proactive recruitment and proactive running of a football club. They made it to Europe for the first time in their history this season. They've navigated various relegations. They were almost liquidated. They almost went bankrupt. They've been promoted, relegations again, promoted again. But as a result of positive and ambitious recruitment, both with managers like Eddie Howe getting them promotion and Donny Iraola finally giving them a competitive edge in the Premier League, they've become a bit of a plucky and dogged, but both plucky and dogged, but also stylistic football club that take it to the very best. So this shows that rebuilds don't have to be forever, but you need to be proactive and you need to be forward-thinking in these rebuilds. And this is something that I hope West Ham take into consideration, because for too long they've been far too stagnant, both in recruitment and in football. So rebuilding and resetting has its rewards, but these rewards do not show up immediately. They come gradually through time, because it's not going to come easy. But good things come to those who wait, and that's arguably the thing to take out of rebuild. Good things come to those who wait. Now, I believe that West Ham will probably struggle in the Championship. I was having a Championship race, because obviously I need to have a look at all the structures of the teams, and I was having a look at the stadiums, and you look at the seating capacities of these stadiums, 20,000, 15,000, 10,000, 20,000, blah blah blah. West Ham's the most with 62,500. Now, I think that the size and the propensity of the London Stadium, it's struggles to create atmosphere, and West Ham being a fairly well-known football team going down to the Championship, I think most teams will reserve their grand final performances for us, and it'll be a struggle to work through that, especially with a stadium and the Championship fixture. But relegation now affords the opportunity for a clean slate and an opportunity to find purpose again, and to find out what it really means to play for West Ham. Now, in this clearing out, this fresh start, fans, through experiencing rebuilds, can come to find figures of strength, of guidance and experience to help the team navigate through these tough periods, through these bleak periods, or help bring a mature edge and experience and a positive light. Now, these players can become immortal warriors or cult figures, a light in the darkness. And, when it feels like you're up shit creek without a paddle, a strong voice only becomes far more powerful. Sunderland, when they went back up to the Premier League, they got the experienced head of Granit Xhaka as a way to stabilise them and make the transition between Championship and Premier League football a bit easier. But that paid out in dividends because Granit Xhaka became their captain, became a warrior who found a passion in playing for Sunderland. He felt like he really, really was proud to represent the Black Cats. And he's become an absolute cultural figurestone at Sunderland. And this is something that West Ham have done through their relegations as well. When they missed out on a playoff promotion in 2004, Crystal Palace went up. West Ham recruited striker Teddy Sheringham. He won the treble with Manchester United. He supported West Ham as a boy, and he gave West Ham a vocal, experienced and mature head to help steer the squad to a playoff promotion. And as a result, he scored 20 plus goals in the Championship season that year. He won the Championship Player of the Year. He won Hammer of the Year as well in that promotion season. And when West Ham went down again at the end of 2011, West Ham got Kevin Nolan, who worked with the manager Sam Allardyce before, and his experience and passion for playing football. He came in to try and re-galvanise the club. The mood following the relegation was absolutely bleak, and he came back, became the captain, and he captained the side back to a Premier League promotion after we beat Blackpool in 2012. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with West Ham's third relegation, who'll stay, who'll go, but I believe that bringing in this experience during the rebuild will only be more beneficial. We saw what happened when we gutted the list of leaders at the start of the season, getting rid of Cresswell and Sofal and Antonio and Emerson, these vocal dressing room candidates. Getting rid of them left the squad completely unbalanced in the Premier League, and we struggled to navigate it. So I wouldn't be opposed to bringing back past hammers like Aaron Cresswell, who's now currently at Stoke, and his leadership's brought stability to Stoke this past season. Bring him back. He's a Hammer of the Year. He's won a European trophy with us. Absolute versatile and determined left back. So I wouldn't be opposed to bringing in someone like that in this rebuild. But rebuilds can often occur also in moments of tribulation. The perfect example is with the Australian cricket team. They found themselves in a rebuild, sort of like England, of a cultural variety following the sandpaper incident at Cape Town in 2018. They lost both their captain and vice-captain, and Justin Langer, who is a part of the golden generation of Australian cricket, where he played with Ponting and he opened with Matthew Hayden, and he understood what it meant to play for Australia. He, a stubborn little boxer of a player, a little fighter. He wore the badge, the Australian crest, with pride, and he came in following Sandpaper Gate, where the cultural perception of Australia was really low, and the fans weren't proud of the team, especially because they cheated in Sandpaper Gate. So Justin Langer was a great hiring, or a great coach to bring in, because of his understanding intimately of the Australian cricket team and what it meant to play for Australia. He was on that tour that Steve Waugh took the Australian cricket team to Gallipoli to closely relate the Anzac and Australian military history to the cricket team, and what it means to represent the Australian badge. And even though Australia as a team is largely known for their dominance at cricket, won only one of their first 6 Test matches under Langer. India came to Australia in 2018-19 and then won that series 2-1 because the rebuild offer a chance for a restoration of culture. A team comes to realise what it really means to play for their team, and because rebuilds simplify everything, the ideal standards and ambitions that define a team come to the fore. And even though India came and won 2-1, there was a positive patch in this rebuild where the team realised what it meant to play for Australia, to stand up for your mates, to fight for every ball, and Tim Paine's knock and sledging or fighting back against the sledging of Virat Kohli and standing up for his teammates and being that strong captain led us to win the second Test match in Perth and restore a pride to fight for Australia. And Australia's current cricket success under Pat Cummins and Andrew McDonald, and winning the Ashes 4-1 and winning the 2023 World Cup, all that sort of stuff, that has only come about because of Justin Langer's cultural rebuild. Because even though Langer was a challenging individual, he often challenged the boys' club and the complacency that could often be seen in the cricket team. He challenged that, but rebuilds are challenging times themselves. And in this challenge, true grit, will, and ambition are revealed. So that is when a rebuild goes right. When you can see the positive pathway to change, the positive pathway to success. But rebuilds can often find themselves going wrong when clubs find themselves in a state of constant flux and perpetual rebuild. Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And this notion of insanity can come to define many teams. In the AFL, Carlton have a habit of sacking coaches. Tottenham in the Premier League also have a habit of sacking coaches. Both teams probably have an inflated sense of their size and success in their respective leagues, and they're more than happy to eradicate someone who they feel doesn't meet their strangely sized sense of self. Tottenham have gone through 7 managers in the last 7 years. They went through Pochettino, Mourinho, Nuno, Antonio Conte, Postecoglou, Thomas Frank, and Igor Tudor. They went through they fired 2 managers this season, and they had 3 managers. And Carlton and the AFL have gone through 6 in the last 12. So in terms of rebuilding clubs, this leaves these football clubs in stagnated periods because nothing changes. If nothing changes, and constantly chopping and changing gives no sense of stability, and the stability and time for stability is something that rebuilds need. They need time to develop. They need time to grow. And a culture cannot form, and a player's desire to buy in cannot occur because nothing changes if nothing changes. So rebuilds are an important facet in sport, and they're not all bad, even though many supporters will look at them and go, oh no, not another rebuild. Sometimes they're necessary to help a club achieve success in the long run. Anyway, 30-minute ramble, classic. World Cup's coming back. Very excited. Hopefully the Aussies do well. Anyway, thank you for listening. This has been Wilks for 3/4 time, where we celebrate the stories of sport.